Hi folks, this is a Kids Church video for upper elementary for 3rd to 5th graders for the month of June. Our story for this month is a story called Pentecost, and it's found in the 2nd chapter of the book of Acts. Acts is the book of the Bible that comes right after the 4 Gospels, and it picks up on the story of what happens with the disciples after Jesus leaves them. Last week, during the children's blessing, I talked about the ascension, that story about when Jesus and his disciples go up to the top of a tall hill and then Jesus goes somewhere, leaves them. Pentecost comes right after that. Before Jesus left, he had promised these disciples that they would have an advocate, that his Spirit would be with them to help them make good decisions, to help them speak the truth. And some people think that Pentecost was the day that that promise came true. There were prophets whose writings are recorded in the Old Testament who imagined a day in the future when all of God's people, regardless of their age or their gender, that everybody would dream dreams and see visions and speak the truth and be a part of changing the world for the better. The prophet Joel in particular had a really clear vision of this. The disciples who went through the events that we talk about on Pentecost, they immediately thought of that prophet, and that was what they used to describe and to understand what was going on. That God's Spirit was coming and was giving power to every person in the community, no matter who they were, no matter their age, no matter their gender, that God was helping everybody take part in making the world a better place. When this story begins, the disciples are kind of scared. They are trying to figure out how to live their lives without Jesus. And they're continuing to meet with each other, but they're meeting in private places, behind closed doors, and they're pretty scared that the people who killed Jesus might be coming to try to hurt them or kill them too. So they had reasons to be afraid. And it's in that context, when they are scared but still gathering together to try to pray and imagine how they can live their lives now, that's when the Spirit of God comes. Have you ever wondered what God's Spirit is like? God's Spirit is described through a lot of different metaphors in the Bible. In the Old Testament, we hear the Spirit of God described as a pillar of fire and a pillar of cloud that guide the people of Israel while they're wandering in the wilderness. Sometimes people think of the Spirit of God as a voice. In the story of Jesus' baptism, the Spirit of God is described as a dove that comes down from the sky. In this story of Pentecost, the Spirit of God comes with a loud wind and with tongues of fire on people's heads. Have you ever looked at a candle and noticed that a flame can look a little bit like a tongue? Maybe pointier than our tongues, but it's got a similar shape. It's kind of like it's licking the air. That's what I imagine when I imagine these tongues of fire over the heads of all of the disciples. And then the next thing that happens is that all of these disciples decide to leave that room with the closed doors and come out into the streets. And there are people in Jerusalem who've come from all over the place for a big festival. And when the disciples come out onto these crowded streets, they begin speaking about Jesus and telling people all the amazing things that they've seen with Jesus' resurrection. They think that they're speaking in their own language, but everybody else hears them speaking in their languages, which are different languages dozens and dozens of different languages, and everybody hears it as if they're speaking in their own language. It's amazing. It's like everyone had an instant translator with them. Some people compare this story to the Tower of Babel, which is a story in Genesis in the Old Testament. In that story, a group of people work together to try to build a really tall tower because they want to be up with God. They want to build a tower all the way to heaven. But that's a bad idea. And so that they don't do that, so that they don't keep trying to be as powerful as God, God confuses them by making them all speak different languages. That's a story that kind of explains why there are people all around the world and why people all around the world speak different languages. It's a myth that explains that. And some people think of the Pentecost story as a story of God bringing everyone back together again. So if everyone was confused and separated by their languages in the story of the Tower of Babel, the story of Pentecost is a story of everyone being brought together even though they speak different languages. That isn't a barrier to people understanding each other and cooperating anymore. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There are going to be some more Pentecost videos coming for the month of June. You can check those out and learn a little bit more about this story. But I hope you'll stick around for a couple more seconds because there's going to be one blooper and also a chance to see the construction vehicles right outside of my house. So if you're into cement mixers or watching people lay sidewalk, there's a special treat coming up for you. There is now a cement mixer right in front of my house, making a lot of noise. Can you hear that?